knows who this is? Anybody? This is the Vitruvian Man. It's a drawing by Leonardo da Vinci, and it's based on the writings of a Roman known as Marcus Vitruvius Pollio, commonly known as Vitruvius. He was a Roman architect, also a civil and military engineer who lived around the 1st century BCE. Vitruvius held that buildings should have 3 attributes: firmitas, utilitas, and vanitas, which when translated from the Latin means soundness or durability, utility, functionality or convenience, and attractiveness or beauty. These 3 principles were adopted by Roman architects and engineers, and when rediscovered in the 1400s, formed the basis for modern architectural design in Europe and Western countries. I learned about Vitruvius when I studied architecture as an undergraduate. The term design thinking was coined by Peter Rowe in his book Design Thinking, where he describes how architects and urban planners approach design problems. The concept was popularized in the early 1990s by Richard Buchanan in his article Wicked Problems in Design Thinking. The design consultant, writer, and speaker, Ralph Chaplin, neatly sums up the need for design thinking when he says, "Thinking about design is hard, but not thinking about it can be disastrous." Now, I could launch into a long explanation about design thinking, the types of problems there are. Then I could talk about the type of thinking models for problem solving. I could then expound on the phases of design thinking, on front-end innovation, abductive reasoning, and the 4 rules of design thinking. And that was what I had originally planned to do for this video. But I thought then, that's a bit too much, and maybe not so useful. So I want to get back to basics. I want to focus on what is good design, and why is that important to everyone? Now you may say, "Bob, this doesn't matter to me. I'm not a designer." And I would say, but it does. Why? Well, let's look at some definitions. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines design as, firstly, a mental project or scheme in which a means to an end are laid down, a preliminary sketch or outline showing the main features of something to be executed, an underlying scheme that governs functioning, developing, or unfolding, and fourthly, a plan or protocol for carrying out or accomplishing something, such as a scientific experiment. And if we look at Wikipedia, their definition of design is a plan or specification for the construction of an object or system, or for the implementation of an activity or process, or the result of that plan or specification in the form of a prototype product or process. So I think this is very important because it's not just about things, it's also about processes and systems and the way that we work. Many writers wax on about what is good design, whether a design is good or not. I think Vitruvius, though, 2,000 years ago, really had it all clearly defined when he said firmitas, that is, the soundness or durability of something, whether it's a physical thing or it's a system or a process. It still needs to be sound, it needs to be durable. Utilitas, the utility or convenience. Does it work? Does it do what it's supposed to do? And the third part, and I think this is the thing that many people only think about when they think about design, is the venustas, the attractiveness or the beauty of the object. And this is a tough one. I'm going to get into that in quite a bit of detail at the end. But I want to expand these principles from just buildings and structures to include anything that we design, both tangible and intangible things that we might work on. So I believe that firmitas, that is soundness or durability, should be viewed somewhat like software durability is in software engineering. It means that software can meet the user's needs for a relatively long time. It can allow an organization to adjust or upgrade the software to its consistently evolving business needs. And I think you could note that a lot of times software might be trouble to upgrade. In the practice of policy analysis, there's 6 dimensions to categorize the effects and implementation of a policy across the period of time, which are collectively referred to as the durability of a policy, or the ability of a policy to produce visible, effective, and compatible results over time. So these dimensions can be broken down into, firstly, effects. And the first one is effectiveness. What effect or effects does the policy have on the targeted problem? Number 2, unintended effects. What are the unintended effects of the policy? Number 3, equity. What are the effects of the policy on different population groups? Does one benefit more or is disadvantaged in some way through a policy? And then the second part is about the implementation of policy. Firstly, cost. What is the financial cost of the policy? And we can talk about, what we talk about many times is the return on investment. Does the benefit exceed the cost? If not, why are we doing it? Now, when we measure benefit and cost, we don't necessarily always have to measure dollars. We can talk about benefits in terms of social benefits and things like that. And the same thing for the costs. Are there any social or economic, sociological costs that we have to consider? What about feasibility? That's the 5th part. Is the policy technically feasible? Can we actually carry it out? And the last one is acceptability. And here we're looking at, do the relevant policy stakeholders view the policy as acceptable? Now, we can actually apply these criteria to almost anything that we are designing. Any kind of process, not just as I said, not just a physical product. Whether it's a business or personal use, whether it's writing a paper or a report for school, developing a workflow or a procedure for the office, or even, of course, setting high-level policies for organizations or governments. Okay, let's move on to the next one, the idea of utilitas. Utility, convenience, or functionality can be looked at as the way something works. In architecture, the spaces provided in the buildings must be adequate and appropriate for the use they're intended for. Otherwise, we would straight away consider it as a bad design. I'm sure many of you have been in buildings and wondered, what was the architect thinking when he or she designed this? And I've got a number of examples I've collected over the years that truly show some of this. In information technology, functionality is defined as the sum of what a product, hardware, or software can do for the user. The functionality of a product is often used in its marketing to identify features that enable user capabilities. Functionality may or may not be user-friendly, but it does relate to what the user has to use it for. It can have lots of great features, but if the user doesn't need those features, they're of no value. In a blog post, 7 Essential Guidelines for Functional Design, which was about website design that I read some years ago, Dustin M. Wax set out what I think are some very useful tips for design. In his words, whether it be a website product package, office building, manufacturing system, piece of furniture, software interface, book cover, tool, or anything else. So he really covered it. I want to paraphrase his guidelines as a series of questions that you could ask yourself when you're looking at a design. So the first one is, what is the product or service's goal? Number 2, who will be using it? Number 3, what do the users intend to use it for? Number 4, is how to use it clear, easy to understand? Number 5, how does a user know if it's working or not working? Number 6, does it engage the user or the users? And number 7, how are mistakes and misuse handled? If we apply these questions, we can improve the quality of our design. Now, I find the most difficult of Vitruvius's 3 principles to define is the venusitas, or the attractiveness, or the beauty. The Latin word literally means the qualities possessed by the goddess Venus, and implies a visual quality arousing the emotion of love. The 15th century writer Alberti, who rediscovered Vitruvius, substituted the word amonentias, pleasure, avoiding the erotic implications of the term venusitas, and subdivided it into 2 components. The first being pulchritudo, and the second ornamentarium. Oh, my Latin really is terrible. Alberti said that pulchritudo comes from harmonious proportions, like those in music, and ornamentarium is auxiliary brightness. Some would argue that there are archetypical images or universal symbols found in music, art, and architecture across different cultures. These are often found in different cultures and different eras. Ornamental motifs include geometric shapes and patterns, plants, and human and animal figures. In Eurasia and the Mediterranean world, there is a tradition of plant-based motifs, while in other parts of the world, typically more geometrical and animal motifs are used. This presentation was triggered by a friend's Facebook post about the design of a car. I've even now forgotten what car he was so excited about. But the design that he was enthusiastic about was really cars. Nothing illustrates this better. The technology of engineering is usually as up-to-date as it can be, but the aesthetics, well, you judge for yourself. As the saying goes, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. And we have seen throughout the 20th century and beginning of the 21st century, many different car designs and a great change in what was considered good design. What is good design? I want to go back and I want to make sure that we're clear. Good design is not just what it looks like, not just how pretty it is, how shiny it is, how bright it is, but more importantly, it's the soundness and the durability and the utility and the convenience. So think about this when you're thinking about design. Thank you.